Narrative rewritten, truth redirected.
While they talk about old lies, new ones grow in the shadows.
The UK Distraction, in theaters now.
They thought we wouldn't notice the timing, just as forensic evidence emerges linking a CIA-connected Capitol cop to the January 6 pipe bombs. The BBC suddenly confesses to doctoring Trump's January 6 speech. Directors resign, headlines scream, and the media goes into overdrive about a lawsuit. But here's what they're desperately trying to hide. A 94 to 98% gate analysis match that could expose the biggest false flag in American history. The intelligence community is running scared, and they're using their oldest trick, create a scandal to bury a bombshell. So don't look away now. And as we wrap up 2025, it's a good time to slow down and reflect on the year. If there is one thing that we've all learned, it's that uncertainty isn't temporary. It's the world we live in now. Waiting for things to go back to normal isn't a plan, it's a gamble. For over decades, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped Americans protect themselves and the people they love by diversifying their wealth with silver and gold. Look, no one knows what 2026 will bring, but one thing is for sure. In an uncertain world, real wealth isn't digital, it's physical, it's lasting, and it's yours. Before the year ends, take one smart step towards a safer future and visit nextnewsgold.com. That's linked down below, and get your free wealth protection kit, or you can call that number on the screen, 877-646-5347, and find out how you can get 10 one-ounce silver holiday coins with qualified accounts that will make great stocking stuffers this year. Now, 24 hours ago, Rahim Qassam posts, the CIA January 6 pipe bomber was also the first to fire into the crowd, which caused the original panic and rush, asking the question. This is the alleged J6 pipe bomber, quite angry there, shooting tear gas into the crowd on January 6. Kanekoa the Great, this is all the talk right now. A 94% gate match to Shauni Kerkhoff looks far more damning when you realize the FBI traced the pipe bomber to the house right next door to hers just within days of January 6. Investigators linked that address to both a Metro card used by the suspect and a vehicle that picked up the bomber on January 5th. Then the FBI reportedly pulled the agents, including Kyle Seraphin, off that lead. It looks like a cover-up. This is the headline story on Blaze Media. This is the story that they would not publish. After consultation within and outside government, they said, no, we're not going to publish the story. Well, now the story has been making the rounds all weekend, and it is quite explosive. And right on cue, the BBC is trying to bury any mention of January 6th by putting out their own story. Of course, who do you think is going to get surfaced in the search results when you type in January 6th? Right, exactly. State-funded media, not Blaze Media. But if you're here, you know better. We're going to get to the cover-up in a moment here. But this is the headline on Blaze Media. Former Capitol Police officer, a forensic match for January 6th pipe bomber, sources say. Steve Baker and Joseph Hanneman writing that story, dropping it just a couple days ago. The FBI, which failed to solve the case in nearly 5 years of investigation, but indicated it was closing in after Blaze News brought in its investigation to intelligence sources, was feet from Falls Church address of the pipe bomb suspect days after January 6, according to the Blaze News investigation. Former FBI special agent Kyle Seraphin realized Friday that he was doing surveillance next door to the woman now suspected of being the January 6 pipe bomber. Quote, the FBI put us one door away from the pipe bomber within days of January 6. We were deliberately pulled away for no logical or logically investigative reason. That's what Seraphin told Blaze News on Friday. And everything about that tells me that they were involved in a cover-up and have been since day one. He continues here and he says they were effing in on it. Seraphin proposed doing a knock and talk at the door of an Air Force civilian employee whose address was tied to a vehicle that picked up the bomb suspect in Falls Church, Virginia on January 5th, 2021. Seraphin's team spent 2 days watching the man, but Seraphin's request to go face-to-face with a person of interest was denied. The team was pulled off the case the same night. That's what he said. Seraphin said he has given the same details publicly since 2021. There's a personal reaction to it, he writes, or he states, which is the complete vindication that the things I've been saying and my recollection of being briefed on this stuff has been accurate for years, and I've never changed my tune. The FBI tied a D.C. Metro Rail smart trip card allegedly used by the pipe bomb suspect to an Air Force civilian employee, but determined that while the man purchased the card, he did not use it. The suspect allegedly used the card to travel from D.C. to a Stop and Falls church after planting the pipe bombs. The Air Force civilian employee had purchased the smart trip card a year earlier. Interesting. You buy a smart trip card a year earlier and you just hand it over to someone who's going to use it. The J6 pipe bomber mystery just blown open 48 hours ago. This is posted. A new investigation by The Blaze says a forensic gait analysis found 94 to 98% match between the pipe bomber suspect, former Capitol police officer who later worked for the CIA. Sources say investigators were one door away from her early on, then suddenly backed off. The suspect, Shauni Rae Kerkhoff, served in the Capitol Police before joining the CIA. If true, this changes everything we've been told about January 6th. The FBI raided hundreds of peaceful protesters, but the one who planted bombs outside the DNC and RNC still walks free. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. But if it does, you start asking who planted the bombs. And here's an image of Shauni Kerkhoff, a soccer player prior to her involvement with the Capitol Police, just to show you an example of some of the gait analysis that was likely done based on video surveillance as well as publicly available video of her playing soccer. Even Rasmussen reports 48 hours ago, good morning. The extent of multi-agency evidence tampering and cover-up is here. 100% Fedsurrection, a masterwork by Steve Baker and The Blaze, former Capitol Police officer, forensic match for January 6th. Rasmussen reports even posting that. 404 to 98% match. So who is Shauni Rae Kerkhoff, 31 years old, from Hamilton, Ohio, College Temple University, living in Alexandria, Virginia. Apparently had a soccer injury. Played soccer in college. During the game, she broke her tibia, leaving her with a distinctive limp. Hired as Capitol Police officer in 2018, was present at the Capitol during January 6th, confronted those entering the building. She also testified to Congress during the January 6th investigation. Current employment, security detail for the Central Intelligence Agency. 9 hours ago, continuing with the gait analysis. So who really planned the January 6th insurrection? OPOA writes, my guess, it's Pelosi and Obama, etc. Well, certainly lines up because Nancy Pelosi had full operational jurisdictional control over the Capitol grounds, which included the locations where the bombs were planted and, of course, the evidence that was suppressed. And if you want more information, go to my interview that I did just the other day with Ivan Raiklin. We posted it on Sunday in full, as well as a deeper analysis on Friday. So make sure you go back and watch those if you have more detailed questions regarding the jurisdiction. So there are some new developments. This is 5 hours ago. Real America's Voice, Julie Kelly explains what they saw over the weekend, claiming the gait analysis has come out to determine the planting of the evidence. Let's listen.
Device and exposing all of this, Kamala Harris's presence, the law enforcement ties of the woman who discovered the RNC pipe bomb. I found the video that showed bomb sniffing canine units, not once but twice, right near the DNC device. So look, few people want to know the identity of the person or people who set those devices. But what we saw happen over the weekend was and there is, you could see law enforcement after the alleged device was found. And as you guys know, it was right in between those two benches under that bush. So at any rate, few people want to know the identity more than I do, or Darren Beatty, or the people who have really done so much work on this. But over the weekend, a really bombshell, sorry for the pun, story on The Blaze claiming that a gait analysis had determined the identity of an individual who had similar walking patterns as this individual here, seen on surveillance video the night of January 5th, which is when the FBI thinks that both of those devices were planted. So this has been, yes, I'm not going to say her name, but she was a Capitol police officer on January 6th. She was using non-lethal munitions against the crowd, firing pepper balls into the crowd, as many Capitol police officers were doing. And apparently, looking at that video, Steve Baker, who's one of the reporters on this story, thought that her walking patterns mirrored the one on the individual on January 5th, who still has not been identified. And the so-called gait analysis, apparently some software determined that the match was around 94% certainty. So I have a lot of skepticism about that story. We can talk about it. But this, as you know, you guys, this took over the internet over the weekend and is still getting a lot of coverage and attention. Exposing.
Now, of course, these are allegations against Shauni Kerkhoff. We have yet to have any reaction from the FBI or the White House in this regard, or any information regarding an active investigation. This is all public, open source intelligence that has been doing this investigation and making these allegations. So we want to make that very clear. How the J6 pipe bomber became, how about, biggest story, how about, I'm sorry, I'm just reading this. Biggest story, how about the J6 pipe bomber being a Capitol police officer? The biggest scandal, this is 48 hours ago, Steve Baker writing, he's the one who broke the story. This might be the biggest scandal and conspiracy in American history. Many heroes were involved in bringing this to light. Some we can name in the coming days, some who want no recognition, and there's so much more of this story to be told. 7 hours ago, MASH Man, responding to Judicial Watch, the person who planted the pipe bomb was also one of the primary witnesses used against January 6 defendants. The whole thing was staged by the government. And let's check in. This is 48 hours ago. Real Robert writes, documents obtained by Judicial Watch through the Freedom of Information Act confirmed that the CIA, including CIA bomb tech teams, was deployed to the Capitol on January 6. They write, in other words, the Capitol police officer, Shauni Kerkhoff, who planted the pipe bombs on January 6, has been working for the CIA since 2001. They write that January 6 was staged in order to conceal the actual crime committed on November 3rd, 2020, to overthrow the U.S. government.
I'm Judicial Watch to the program. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Glenn, good to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
So I'm reading this story today, and I'm like, what am I missing here? The CIA, according to records now that you FOIA'd, the CIA deployed bomb techs, dog teams, and personnel to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. But they're not allowed to do that, are they?
I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
You wouldn't think so. Yeah.
You know, what's weird about this is we didn't get it from the CIA. We got it from the ATF. So we asked for records, right? And they sent us, well, first of all, they didn't give us anything, so we had to sue in federal court. So that's almost a year ago now. And then we get this batch of records showing these text messages from ATF people saying they had bomb tech teams with them over at that site where the pipe bombs were. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was, it looks to me like the DNC site at least. It's unusual. Was the CIA doing a foreign intelligence operation? Was there a foreign intelligence component here? Were they investigating Americans through this process as a result? What else were they doing? What else was the CIA doing? My guess is my colleagues are smarter than me and already have FOIAs out on this issue. But frankly, it didn't occur to me to ask the CIA what their involvement in January 6th was. But you never know what you're going to find when you ask someone else.
I'm Judicial Watch.
The CIA snooping around. What were they doing? Preserving their asset? I don't know. Well, now we have this. How convenient as this story starts to surface and take over all the search results. If you're on X and you're paying attention, you're typing up January 6th. Well, you might just end up stumbling upon what the BBC has been talking about The BBC has become an activist beacon of partisan views, Alan Miller writes. From falsely editing President Trump's speech to trans issues, Gaza, ULEZ, lockdowns, net zero, free speech, protests, hugely partisan, and it reports it as news. The public is sick. LBC, his litigation lawyers are never having a quiet day as Trump threatens legal action against the BBC. They go live with their instant reactions over on LBC. Great Britain News. There could be serious ramifications for the special relationship. GB News political commentator Olivia Utley reports on Donald Trump threatening the BBC with legal action and the potential political impact of it.
State visit from... Well, absolutely. And I'm fascinated in what Keir Starmer makes of all of this. He has spent a lot of the past year trying to cozy up to President Trump, trying to get various deals between the UK and the US. We saw that a state visit from President Trump recently where Keir Starmer was sort of touching his shoulder, scooping, bending down to pick up some papers that Donald Trump has dropped. He is desperate to get in Donald Trump's good books. And contrary to what many people thought, obviously, these two men are very, very different animals. The President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom have formed what seems to be quite a close bond. But
that's what passes for news as the January 6th pipe bomber takes over on X, but BBC pushing their own January 6th narrative at this time. Right on cue, 10 hours ago, they're seeking to regain trust amongst audiences, GB News writes. National reporter there, Will Godley, speaks live from Broadcasting House as BBC chair apologizes for an error in judgment over the Trump edit.
Certainly is a bombshell, and the weather outside New Broadcasting House certainly...
And that's what they call a bombshell over there in the UK, right? Not the fact that we finally figured out, allegedly, who the January 6th pipe bomber is.
Dramatic, lots of rain, but perhaps the atmosphere inside New Broadcasting House just as dramatic as well, with this apology now out in the open and lots more details in the apology underway as we now, the BBC saying what the purpose of that edit in the panorama was. They said the purpose of editing the clip was to convey the message of the speech by President Trump on Capitol Hill on the 6th of January. They said at the time it didn't attract significant audience feedback, but the points raised by the Standards Committee at the time were passed on to BBC Panorama and the teams who make the programme.
So BBC scrambling to cover for deceptive editing practices on January 6th, the day after the pipe bomber dropped their bomb. Caroline Levitt, Rapid Response 47, calling BBC fake news. BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News, she writes. Donald Trump writes, the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting and fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech on January 6th. Thank you to the Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are the very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our number one ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. James Freeman says, this is why BBC is done for. BBC's Nick Robinson this morning defending the BBC, claiming that it is the most trusted news organization in the UK and probably in the world. He goes on to imply, this is a witch hunt. This is why we need to close the BBC, he writes. So you can see President Trump going after the BBC, but still no response from the FBI or the White House regarding what happened with that pipe bomber. But the BBC pushing hard their narrative about apologizing for editing President Trump's speech and completely ignoring what happened with the big news over the weekend. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. See, this is not journalism. It's intelligence agency damage control at its finest. When the Blaze exposed that gate analysis matched to Shauni Rae Kerkhoff by 94 to 98%, a former Capitol cop who mysteriously landed at the CIA, the establishment hit the panic button. Within hours, a years-old story from the BBC editing scandal magically becomes front-page news. Top executives resign over ancient history, while the real story, federal agents potentially planting those pipe bombs, gets buried under manufactured outrage. This is how the deep state operates. When caught, they don't deny, they distract. They flood the zone with lesser scandals to protect the bigger lie. So here's my question for you. Do you believe the BBC scandal timing is just coincidence? Yes or no? Let's have a conversation in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out our merch shop, linked in the description. Real gear for real patriots who see through the propaganda.